Thank you, Tara, and to the whole Open Data Week team for hosting us and having us back again this year. So my name's Lee Elan. I'm the Chief of Planning with the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation. You can see the names and titles of the other panelists here who will introduce themselves as they make their presentation. And I volunteer to organize this panel each year because I'm really interested in what other agencies are doing with open data. I respect their work and I want to learn and showcase how they're using data. So I'll say a few words about my office and our data. The Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation was created about 15, 16 years ago out of the first Plan YC. And the bread and butter of our work is overseeing environmental cleanup projects on private sites before new buildings go up. So we have on Open Data a data set of all the cleanup sites that we're working on in the course of the work. Sometimes they're excavations of clean native soil, not just contaminated soil. Say somebody's digging out a sub-basement. We want to make sure that good glacial till pristine soil is reused within New York City. So we have a clean soil bank to help that be used on other projects in our program and to city capital projects. We also work with community-based organizations that are doing community brownfield planning in different areas of the city, and those areas they're working at are on Open Data. And we have some historic land use information, which is pretty interesting. And you can look at the data sets themselves in their raw form on the Open Data portal. You can also look at it on our SPEED portal, which is conveniently at nyc.gov/speed. And you can turn on and off the layers on the right. It's got city and state and federal environmental data. It's also got basic orienting data like tax block and lots and subway lines and that sort of thing. So you can look at this and get a sense of what's going on in neighborhoods of interest. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam from the Mayor's Office of Operations, who's going to talk about a really exciting data project that they're working on.
Thanks, Lee. I'm Adam Barron with the Mayor's Office of Operations, and let me explain a little bit what our office does. We were created in the 70s in response to the city's budget crisis to plan, coordinate, and direct governmental operations and hold offices and agencies accountable. And we work to strengthen efficiency and coordination across all agencies, all deputy mayor portfolios. One way we do that is through the MMR, the Mayor's Management Report, which is released twice a year. There's a preliminary Mayor's Management Report that went out in the last few weeks. We're also the policy implementation arm for City Hall, and then we house a few key citywide accountability functions like rulemaking and customer service. Our office has three main engagement teams. One is the performance management team that focuses on the MMR. Another is a project management team that really helps support initiative delivery. And then the last is the team that I'm on, the data research and analysis. I lead the analytics unit, and we focus a lot on data and geospatial analysis, particularly 311 and 911. We do a lot of dashboard and data viz. We also have a unit of developers that focus on database and data collection strategy. And then there's a few technical policy projects that we lead and are helping implement. One of which is the 3D Underground project, which has gotten some press coverage. Everyone's calling it top secret, but if the New York Post is talking about it, it is not quite a secret anymore. But so I wanted to feature that a little bit today. And so the idea with this project is to develop a highly secure 3D data sharing platform for the underground built and natural environment. So the issue today is that there's not really data sharing around this, and the New York Times quoted some workers in the field calling it peek and shriek when they open up the ground and actually see what is down there. And that has big implications for both emergency response, but also capital planning. The idea is that the platform needs to be highly secure. There's a lot of critical infrastructure data that needs to be shared that city agencies and utilities need access to. We have some safeguards in place. It's a limited pool of users, geographically limited extracts of data, and then the data is only available for a limited amount of time before being purged. So there's a lot of sensitivity with the infrastructure data itself, but the natural environment side is also very important, but much less restricted, much less sensitive. So New York City government has around 50,000 soil boring reports, and this kind of dovetails a little bit with what Lee was just showing of the SPEED portal. And the soil boring information is held by a variety of agencies in different formats, although largely contains the same pieces of information. But unfortunately, this data is largely in PDF today. And so it's not really been leveraged, is not really useful to all of the people across city government and outside of city government, like many of you all who would benefit from using this data. And soil composition is really important for emergency prevention and response, particularly as certain soils are more prone to undermining than others, stormwater modeling, asset management, and capital planning and construction. So the city's begun digitizing, starting with the data held by DOB. DOB holds about 70% of that 50,000. And we have just about completed digitizing that. And then I think we would like to consider what other soil data across city government or even outside of it, but within the 5 boroughs could be useful to incorporate. And we do have Columbia University on board to develop an interpolation methodology to try to guess at what is between those 50,000 discrete observations. And the other thing is we're trying to set up a digital intake portal so that we stop creating PDF data in the year 2026, because we can do better and we can leverage this data. So I'll show you what this looks like. On the left are 3 different formats of PDF soils data. And on the right is some manual digitization that we had done, but just to help you visualize what this could look like. So you can see each of the layers of cake of what the soil is supposed to be in that area. You can envision what interpolating between these observations would look like, connecting those layers of cake. And so this is a kind of data set that could ultimately end up on open data. There's much less restrictions around this, but a lot of use for this data both within and outside of city government. And then the last thing I just want to touch on is how we at Operations use open data. So we publish several data sets to open data, including the MMR indicators. But we also use open data for a lot of different data sets, through and one, permits, violations, hearing, land use, administrative boundaries, and more. It's always our first stop on an analysis project. It's authoritative, up to date, and non-sensitive, and so there's really no issues to broker access. Interagency data sharing can be complicated, but it's really quite easy with the open data portal. And then on the 3D Underground project, and this sort of gets at kind of digital twin themes, but really the goal is to provide as comprehensive of a vision of what the underground looks like. And there's a lot of above ground implications for what happens underground. And there's a lot of data sets on the open data portal that we will bring to be foundational data sets, visualized in the background with utility data and soil data to give a complete picture. So some examples here are the building footprints, the tax lot, land use data, street centerline, pavement edge, street trees, street opening permits, and a digital elevation model. There's a lot of non-sensitive things, but then there's some sensitive data sets, and we want to put them all in one place to give a comprehensive view of the above ground and the below ground and how they connect. So I will turn it over to Josh.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Josh Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of GIS at New York City Emergency Management. I've been with ISEM for about 18 years now. I'm originally from the Bronx, city through and through. A little bit about our agency. If you're not familiar, we're the coordinating agency for New York City. We've been around for many decades, original legacy going back to civil defense offices. In our current form, we're going to celebrate our 30-year anniversary, I think technically about a week, when we became part of the mayor's office in 1996, and we've been a full city agency since early 2002. On the screen is our general core pillars of our mission: planning, preparing, and mitigating all different types of emergencies, coordinating with all our partner agencies to help facilitate response and recovery, collecting and disseminating information, whether it's the partners or to the public as well, and then outreach, education, etc. So it's a good segue. The work that Adam described, the 3D Underground, particularly, it's fascinating work to us. I think it will be of great benefit as we help coordinate these peak and shriek jobs. And it's a great example, I think, of collaborative effort across the city. The mayor's operations team sitting at the nexus of everything. We've helped provide some support in addition to other community partners, et cetera. So that's a great effort going forward. I'll talk about a couple of our more public-facing data sets. A lot of the work that we do in my GIS shop, while not say particularly sensitive, is not always public-facing as we help support emergency response, et cetera. What is probably our top line public data set still to this day is hurricane evacuation zones. That's something that our team at Emergency Management develops. The last major update was about 5 years ago. We'll see if that is periodic. There's nothing planned at this time. The update cycle is generally driven by when the National Hurricane Center releases new storm surge modeling. That's what underlies this data. And so our team, with input of a lot of other stakeholders, goes through and converts that irregular water model data into these hurricane evacuation zones. And these are up year round. We're about less than 2 months now to the official start of Atlantic hurricane season. In New York City, we look at August 1st as our unofficial start, but never too early to be prepared. So there is a public-facing Finder website. We recently switched to an Esri version with our colleagues at OTI, but really the same functionality. Users can put in their location, find out if they are in an evacuation zone. If there was an active threat out there, we would message that via this site. And we'll also be able to find nearby potential evacuation centers. They're generally schools that would open in certain emergencies, and we also message those year round. And this data is available on Open Data. It's also available from our colleagues at City Planning, another way to get the evacuation zone data. So certainly encourage folks and your friends and neighbors to take a look. Never too early. What we would expect to run up against a little bit sooner, although it's not so long since our last deep freeze, is hot weather. We have a similar site, a Finder for what we used to refer to as cooling centers. Now we refer to more broadly as cool options. And it's changed in the last couple of years that this is now a 24/7, 365 resource. Obviously, when it's 5 degrees out, we're less interested, but the concept is to allow folks to plan and see the resources year round. That also was migrated to an Esri platform within the last year or two. So here, this data is not actually yet up in open data on this form, but it is, and I have the link here, it is literally an open data set, right? This is a public Esri application on OT site, and all the services that are used up there are available, right? So anyone who wants to see a potential universe of sites that are used as cooling facilities can go look at that at any time. And switching gears just a little bit, if you've seen me speak in the past, I've highlighted some of this. The New York City's Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is something that is updated every 5 years. The original genesis was as a FEMA requirement, which, such as I know, it still is, to get funding and reimbursement after disasters, but really it's an opportunity for localities to work to plan ahead of time and track what efficient mitigation actions can be taken. The core of this work is done by our colleagues in our recovery resiliency team. You might have seen some of them speaking yesterday on some of this work, but our GIS group provides a lot of support. So here you see what is now, and has been for maybe 10 years now, a web-based plan. So I find it pretty easy to navigate. As we do at Emergency Management, we tend to focus a lot of our efforts on natural hazards, weather-related things, and that is a specific focus of this plan. And you can see here the different areas that we look at. The plan gives you the opportunity to sort of assess what our existing built human environment looks like, what the different risks are from various types of threats. A few tools. Just wanted to highlight again, all of this is accessible via a menu. If you go to this website, nychazardmitigation.com, we have a series of what we call community risk assessment dashboards. That's something I also like to feature because our GIS team did a lot of work to provide the apps and maps and data that go into this. And the idea here is that community member can select a particular neighborhood and select from a range of hazards and get a look at the specific impacts or exposure in their area. And so this is a screenshot showing someone looking at coastal flooding impact in the Greenpoint area. Another great tool that continues to be developed and expanded over the years is our hazard history and consequence tool. And there is an internal version with a little bit of enhanced data. There's a public version that folks can access, again, from the hazard mitigation plan. It's undergone some recent improvements. And the short pitch on this is it allows you to search the types of hazards, particular events. And if you can see in the screenshot, a small post-tropical cyclone Ida, Hurricane Sandy are listed under some notable events. And the concept here is whatever data is available, we're looking to capture and archive so that we can establish what the consequences were in different areas from an event. Meteorological data could be in there. If there are flooding levels, et cetera, we're going to capture that. But we also might have something like ridership data for the MTA or school absences, things like that. And the idea is to be able to centralize this to provide some resources to assess the consequences and potential solutions to impacts from various types of events. And the last thing I wanted to highlight, again, another tool accessible from the hazard mitigation plan that's also undergone some recent updates is the New York City Urban Risk Index tool. And this allows users to look at whether it's risk, impact from different hazards, social vulnerability, resilience capacity of different neighborhoods relative to each other, right? So if you're going to look at where relative risk is, whether it's from particular hazards or based on overall vulnerability, et cetera, this is our attempt to combine that data and make it a little more easy to navigate and explore. And that's it for me. So thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Matt.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matt Croswell. I'm the GIS team lead and open data coordinator for Department of City Planning. I've been with DCP for over 20 years, and I'll be walking you through an overview of the open data products, tools, and applications that we have available at City Planning, and highlighting a few updates since last year or that are upcoming in 2026. So first, we'll discuss the open data catalog. City Planning has a long history of making our data available to the public, even before the open data law passed in 2012. We have over 170 different data products published on the portal, all with different update frequencies. You can see our monthly updates, including zoning data sets like zoning districts or mandatory inclusionary housing. Also includes our Pluto and Map Pluto, which is a data set, which is our flagship tax slot based data set, contains property and building info. This is one of our most widely used data sets. Traditionally, it was released every quarter, but we now release a monthly minor version that only contains the updates of zoning related fields. However, we do have a major version of Map Pluto, which contains the full standard release, and that's updated quarterly. Some other quarterly releases include Lion, which is a street centerline data, districts, which are the boundaries of most administrative, political, and census districts citywide, as well as some other supportive files for GeoSupport, which is our official geocoding app for MIC. We also have some less frequent and as-needed data sets. These include our capital projects database, some census and demographic info, city facilities like facilities database or city-owned and leased properties, our housing database that's updated twice a year, and includes building permits from DOB post 2010. And we have some waterfront climate sustainability data sets looking at like future high tide and sea level rise. All of the DCP's open data is also archived on our website. So if you're looking to access this data, there are many options available. First, we have our own redesigned website, commonly referred to as the Bytes of Big Apple. You can download all DCP data and access related metadata on this site. We also make all of our spatial data available on ArcGIS Online. You can access our data via the REST services links directly on the Bytes page. As you can see on this page. All of our data is also available on the C Open Data portal, and all of our data is available in our web application. Not all of our data, but most of our data is available in web applications like Zola, Street App, Population Fact Finder. And you can now find these data explorers on our website in the resources tab under the Data Explorer sub-tab of our new website. So I want to start to cover some of the highlights the updates that have happened in the past year. and some that are coming in 2026. So first we have the Climate and Sustainability Planning team has relaunched a new version of their Waterfront Revitalization Program Mapper, or the NYC WRP Mapper. This was built using Experience Builder and ArcGIS Online. The WRP establishes the city's policies for waterfront planning, preservation, and development projects to ensure consistency over the long term. The WRP Mapper provides a comprehensive overview of the geography within the jurisdiction of the WRP. The mapper is intended to help users understand when WRP review is applicable to projects in New York City. Some of the new layers include the FEMA 2007 flood insurance rate maps, the 2015 preliminary flood insurance rates map, and the NYC panel on climate change 2015 coastal risk layers. New features include a user-friendly Near Me tool to analyze search results or place points proximity to the WRP special areas, and detailed instructions and links that guide users to submit high-quality WRP applications. This was just launched on St. Patrick's Day about a week ago. And upcoming from the same team is the Coastal Flood Hazard Mapper. This is also an Experience Builder app in ArcGIS Online, and the target release is within April of this year. The Flood Hazard Mapper provides a comprehensive overview of the coastal flood hazards that threaten the city today, as well as how these hazards are likely to increase in the future with climate change. It's intended to enable more informed decision-making by residents, property owners, and policymakers. The new app will be more user-friendly and will include new future flood layers based on the MPCC4 sea level rise projections from 2024. This includes features like the future floodplains projected at 1% and 0.2% annual chance floodplains. That's 100-year and 500-year storms. For the 2030s, 2050s, 2080s, 2100s, and 2150s, it also contains future high tides, which are the projected high tide overland inundation for the same period of time. Our next update is the Capital Projects Portal. The Capital Planning and Support, or CAPS team, worked with the application engineering team to launch this new portal this past December. This portal will eventually replace the current Capital Projects Explorer app, but currently they are both existing. The new app was designed to help users explore where and how the city is investing its capital money across NYC and highlight community board priorities across NYC's unique neighborhoods. It features two main layers. One, the Capital Projects database, which you can also get in the Capital Projects Explorer. This database allows you to explore NYC's capital project portfolio within and across agencies. A new data set, the Community Board Budget Requests, or CBBR. This layer shows each capital request submitted by each of the 59 community boards within New York City through the annual Community District Statement of Needs process. This data set will be published to the NYC Open Data Portal eventually this year, and it will be updated each spring to show only the most recent year submissions and agency responses. The new features in this app include the CBBRs are grouped together to alleviate visual clutter, so it's like aggregation. Links to the raw data dictionary, and data releases on the About page, and a results panel with expanded information and the ability to export data. Some planned enhancements include the expansion to include facilities database with the new facility conditions info that will be coming, the ability to filter data within a given radius, and we're scoping out a possible expansion to include a housing and or population growth component. Another one we're really excited about coming from our data engineering team, we'll be adding 7 new fields to our Pluto and Map Pluto datasets. This is partially due to the adoption of our City of Yes housing opportunities text amendments, but also to fill some gaps in providing a more complete picture of the city's zoning and land use. So the 7 fields include 4 mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH area options, so options 1 through 4. These 4 separate binary fields include which MIH area applies to a tax lot based on if the tax lot's 10%, based on if the tax lot is covered by 10% or more of the MIH mapped area. Next one is transit zone. This is a single field that indicates which transit zone applies to a tax lot. The assignment's a little more complicated than MIH, but the full definition will be available in the Pluto Data Dictionary when it's released. Our next new field is the maximum allowable affordable residential FAR. So this is the highest residential floor area ratio allowed if MIH applies to the lot. And last, we have the maximum allowable manufacturing or industrial FAR. So this is the highest floor area ratio allowed if the primary zoning district for a tax lot is manufacturing. So Pluto already captures max FAR for residential and commercial, but until now, it didn't have manufacturing. So we're completing that. The 7 new fields appear at the end of the existing Pluto fields. So they should not disrupt any scripts or data pipelines or applications that are currently consuming the Pluto dataset. And if you'd like to know more information about these changes or learn how the process to calculate these fields, our DCP data engineering team is hosting their own open data event on this topic on Thursday, March 26th at 10 a.m. You can go to opendataweek.nyc to register if you're interested. Our next update includes the Secret Data Hub. So this product is a website that houses all the data sets related to New York City Environmental Quality Review Process, or SEQR. The site provides a single portal for applicants to find the various data resources from city, state, and federal agencies to help applicants locate the most up-to-date resources to conduct their environmental reviews. It offers users the ability to download data directly or links to the original data source. It also offers 2 distinct ways to search for the data, one by the secret analytic chapters, and the second by the individual dataset itself, which lists each dataset and what chapters it applies to. You could also download CSV from the site that has all the data and other metadata fields like the latest version or update dates, the file type, and source. The site was built by our data engineering team in coordination with our CAPS team. It's hosted on GitHub Pages and was launched last June. You can access the Secret Data Hub at the link listed on the page here, on the slide here, or on our Resources Data Explorers page on our website. And last but not least, we just have a few miscellaneous updates from some of our apps. So in Zola, we have the Zoning Index app. So it used to be a standalone app, has now been retired and moved into the Zola application. So you can find your zoning map numbers based on geography there. There's a 50-foot transit station buffer areas that were added to the zoning for accessibility layer. So now you can determine if the ZFA applies to your property. We recently added the 2024 aerial images, and future update is the current subway base map layer will be replaced by a new regional rail line and station layer, and include all regional rail lines and station envelopes. In our Equitable Development Data Explorer, or EDDI tool, all the data was updated this past July. For more information, you can see the data dictionary on the About page. There was changes made to our ZAP search and applicant portal applications to allow for the tracking of the recently adopted ballot initiatives for expedited land use review. And finally, if you are interested in being notified about the land use applications that are in public review, you can subscribe to the ZAP email notifications for community district or citywide. Go to ZAP search application or visit the link on the screen. And then finally, if you have any questions about DCP's open data, you can reach us at dcpopendata@planning.nyc.gov. You can also have my contact info here, and you can reach out to me as well. And with that, it concludes my portion. I'll turn it back over to Lee. We can run the questions and answer section.
Great. Thank you, everyone. This is terrific. A lot of really interesting stuff here. And thank you, everyone, for being concise. So we have lots of time for Q&A. I saw a hand raised earlier. We can do that, but let's first go to the questions in the chat. Let's see. Here we go. For Adam, is street substrate beneath the latest layer part of the model plan, for example, cobblestones?
So that relies a little bit on the underlying data. We've been focused primarily so far on DOB data, which is largely outside of the street. It's within the property boundaries. That DOB requires it for foundation work, but I think we're happy to include that wherever that data does exist and to fill in that gap.
Thank you. Let's see. Someone's asking, have you compared your data with seismic activity data? I think this might be a question for Josh.
So I was having some audio problems there.
A participant wants to know if you've compared your data with seismic activity data.
Or is that related to the underground?
Is that for the underground? In the hazard mitigation plan, we do look generally at earthquakes as a hazard. We're doing more citywide work.
Okay, so that's part of the hazards. And in case this was a question for Adam, is the soils work you're doing compared in any way to seismic activity data?
I think that's certainly something that could be done eventually. There's experts in the city who are better equipped to do that, but yeah, certainly seismic activity impacts different soil types differently, particularly sand could become liquefied, something like that. That's certainly a hazard we're aware of as part of all kinds of emergency response activities. So certainly that's something that could be done with the data to take it a step further.
Thank you. Okay, we got a couple of questions about cooling centers. Why are they called cooling options now? And could they be repurposed during the winter for heating?
Yeah, so quick, I had put some thoughts in the chat as well, but I was inelegant in describing cool options is part of a focus to try and shift away from any idea that a cooling center is the one and only solution to battling the heat. So cool options we're looking at, yes, we still do have cooling centers, which is like a partner that works with the city under some guidelines to open up, and we try and message that as best we can. But a park with a sprinkler, for example, during the day could be a great resource for some folks. And so that's really the branding change. We're listing more of that on the website now to try and just give folks a broader picture. In terms of heating centers, the shortest answer is they're unlikely to be repurposed because there's a lot that goes into what a specific facility is good for certain things. We did see some use of warming centers or buses in the city this winter during the extreme colds, and those were identified based on different criteria. I'd say short answer is no, it's unlikely that they would be directly repurposed, but we do leverage any of the work that we do to see what might inform other hazards.
Very good. Another question about how to view the maps. Again, we'll send the links along with the slides. Are data from the city that are not centralized in New York City data portal, where to go to a specific agency for their public data? I'm pretty sure Tara wants to correct me that the open data law, if city agencies are publishing data, it gets published on the open data portal as well. There shouldn't be any rogue data published by agencies that isn't in the open data portal. The idea is it should be a one-stop shop. Tara, anything you want to add to that?
I believe that's right, though any colleague is free to correct me on.
Okay. Any plans that the city could start mapping areas optimal for geothermal or clean energy development for builders and communities? Just my experience with speed of how people might use it to find sites for remediation, I think it has to do with what you input, like what size of a site and what facilities need to be proximate to it are for that. Unless anybody here has any particular find an option for geothermal data set that they're aware of.
It looked like there was some discussion. I think someone maybe pointed out, I and others, maybe we used the term map a little loosely. I'm not a developer. Most of the time we're talking about a website, or that is, as far as I know, the simplest way to push data out to the public. So generally, that's what we're looking at.
Thank you. Okay. What was used to build the capital projects portal? Is it also Experience Builder or something else?
No, that's a lot of open source technology. There is a GitHub for that page, and I can send that out to you all so you can dig in further.
Okay, great. We'll catch up after this and figure out what to put in the email to all the registrants and attendees. Why an app specific to coastal flooding? And somebody had a guess at response. It's the main major threat to New York City due to climate change. Why do we have an app for this? Josh, you want to weigh in on why coastal flooding?
That also might be for me, since that was the coastal flood hazard mapper is an upcoming app. We have a current version. It's an Experience Builder. I'm sorry, that's an old web map app in Esri, and it's being modernized to an Experience Builder. One of the main uses for the flood hazard mapper is to determine the base flood elevation, which is very important for owning homes in the floodplain. And so getting your homeowner's insurance, you need to know that BFE. So that's one of the main functions it serves. But then in general, just knowing the risk of flooding in areas of the city.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a question about, will the city become more transparent in the financials of capital projects? You want to talk about what information is included in the capital project portal?
Operations has a capital projects dashboard that is public, that is transparent about the budget and schedule of individual projects. It pairs nicely with DCP's project, but there is a resource that exists publicly on budget, and that data is also on open data.
Yeah, and actually in the past, a few years ago, a lot of the information was just in like PDFs and wasn't as available. You could still get it through the PDF, but it wasn't in a machine readable form. And so the creation of the capital planning database, or capital projects database, was to create a database that would make that data more machine readable. And so this is already a step in improvement of making that data more transparent. And then what Adam just said as well.
Thank you, Adam and Matt. Do these come with APIs for others to integrate with their own analysis? Anybody here can speak to APIs, but I know the whole purpose of open data and what we saw through data through design is people outside agencies taking this data and doing their own analyses, making art, making their own apps, etc. Anybody else want to weigh in on this about APIs?
Any data set that's on the open data portal is accessible through the Socrata API there. And then with city planning, any of our geospatial data that we make available on ArcGIS Online is also available as a REST service through the ArcGIS Online cloud platform as well.
Thank you. This is definitely a question for Josh. How often does NISOM update the hurricane evacuation zone? Is it every few years or decade?
There's no prescribed interval. In the past, it's been 7 to 10 years. It's a modern iteration of these. I believe 2003 was the first, 2013, 2021. So we will get in, and that has been driven by when a new updated model is available. So the underlying data originally is what's called the SLOSH model from the National Hurricane Center. They're running that for our area as the science and computing technology improves. So the short version is, while that model remains the same, there's no new underlying predictions. So we will be in touch. And if there were longer intervals, we would assess. I will say, to the reference of water levels changing, we build the zones to be very conservative at each level of the analysis. And so that builds us in buffer room, basically intentionally. And also we are operating at the top end of the scale. You're talking 36 feet of water or something. The numbers for a decade or so are a little bit larger than we're looking at, but that's certainly a consideration.
Thank you. Let's see, we've got a conversation about a use case here, looking at your cell phone to figure out flood projections 20 years in the future, and people talking about having used it. How can you search for building permits using City of Yes bonus zoning? Also, OYO permits that was approved by HPD.
There's DOB now for the Department of Buildings to search for building permits. And then with our housing database, we aggregate the residential housing permits into that database, or filtered down to just the residential portion. But it also does a lot of data cleaning where there's different types of building permits and CFOs. And so it gets it down to, if there's multiple permits within a year, that it's cleaned up so that you're only seeing one version of it and not double counting or triple counting. Specifically about the City of Yes, it would just have to be within a zoning district that's changed through the City of Yes, which is a lot of them. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly which ones are affected by the City of Yes, because it's a major text amendment that was applied to most of the zoning resolution.
Thank you. I think this question might be for Adam. Does the soil test apply to the parks also?
So the Parks Department does a lot of their own soils testing, and that's one of the city agencies we'd like to incorporate eventually into the soils model.
Thank you. Let's see, someone seen a park during DEP's presentation on cloudburst management, implications to figure out how much rainfall fell in each location. whether there could be non-sewer solutions to handle the rainfall. Would that information and data be available? Nobody here is from DEP, so
Yeah.
can't speak to that. But if anybody's got any comments, please go ahead.
Josh, would you want to talk about FloodNet at all?
Sure. Yeah, we can't speak to specifically what DEP is doing, but just as Adam mentioned, FloodNet is a program that they've helped supervise with others in the city, including MOCEJ and academic partners. So a whole bunch of folks may have seen them. I live in Gowanus. There's a couple in my neighborhood, and we can share the website. These are publicly available. They're small optical sensors on usually like street sign poles. And the idea there is to provide real-time or close to real-time monitoring for floods, right? So I live near the somewhat famous intersection of the Carroll Street and 4th Avenue in Gowanus, where manhole covers will pop up in bad rains. That's a very known location, but locations like that and others around the city have those. And that's some of the working with partners. Just in general, we're looking to expand that network. Yet there's a lot of different work being done around the city to help identify. It is difficult, and I came up working a lot with hurricanes, and even though the systems are so huge, there's some regularity to them, and we're able to look at predictive hazard models well in advance. These cloud bursts or heavy rain events are very challenging, but FloodNet is one of the good solutions that's out there to help us monitor.
And just to mention that FloodNet data is on open data as well.
Great. Thank you. We'll continue with Adam. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this. Is the Krieging interpolation research at Columbia ongoing? Is that a civil engineering research project? Curious. It sounds like a super interesting problem.
Excellent pronunciation. Yeah, the Krieging is being led by Columbia's civil engineering department. So yeah, they're working on it actively for the next couple of months.
All right. How will the information from the Environmental Justice NYC report and mapping tool, especially the EJ areas, help guide which neighborhoods are prioritized, how communities are engaged in the 3D Underground project?
So our project is citywide. We want the data to be available. An emergency could strike anywhere across the 5 boroughs. There's capital projects happening across all 5 boroughs as well. So there's not exactly a prioritization of neighborhoods. It's really a citywide solution. I think that report informs a lot of other things happening across the city, but not so much the 3D Underground project itself.
Thank you. We have somebody confirming that every data set on the NYC Open Data Portal is available as an API through Socrata. The answer is yes. For systems like Pluto and other frequently updated data sets, how do you keep things consistent across systems as updates happen? They read from the same set of geographic files that city planning validates and maintains. Anything to add to that, Matt?
I'm not sure I understand the question. We have a tax lot based data set, as every tax lot based on the source data from DOF. And so there's other source data that's then aggregated and put together. And so that's the major release for that is put out quarterly. And then to update for our zoning, which is monthly, we release a minor version. But if there's something more specific about it being consistent, especially geographically, please let us know. We can follow up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just turn it to Tara for a couple of closing words. Thanks for everyone's interest this year.
Thanks, everybody. Especially thanks to Lee, Adam, Matt, and Josh for all of your work putting this session on. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
All right. Great session this year. Happy Open Data Week, and we'll see you around.